Okay, good morning, everyone. We are excited to start today on a Monday. Okay, here we go. Okay, so again, this is Practical Bitachon in 2022, with regard to trust in God. And it's a 15-minute class, 10 minutes on Shaar Habitachon, the gate of trust, and 5 minutes, we're going to read a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe on trust. And today's class is dedicated in loving memory of Josh Harris, the Bitachon Lone Soldier Veteran, who we definitely miss dearly, and his neshama should have an aliyah. And here we go. We're going to rock in. So we were talking last class, we were discussing the importance of a person to not be afraid if they see someone doing something inappropriate, that just because the person's wealthy or stuff like that, it doesn't mean he gets the free pass. We have to remember where our funds come from, where everything comes from, where our wealth comes from, and it comes from Hashem. And so we're going to talk over here that if someone is right now sees that there's someone that's, I'm going to give an example of the boss that is doing something that's inappropriate. Someone's at a meal somewhere, you're at a table, and all of a sudden you see someone that's ridiculing someone. Just because he's your boss, he's someone that he quote unquote is your head of human resources or something else like that, you have to stand up and be like, no, I can't say anything because, hey, this is I know where he's the one that signs my paycheck, or he's the one that I get my big business deals from. That's not the way that we should be going. So as we're going to say over here, as a result, he won't feel pressured to join them in their inappropriate behavior. Rather, he will divest himself from their favors and from the bothers of being gracious to them, as well as from an obligation to pay them back for any good they do to him. If a person remembers that the real money comes from Hashem, you're not going to have to feel that pressure of, oh my gosh, I have to be able to stand up and be able to, I would call it the free pass, when someone's doing something obnoxious just because they're the one that we quote unquote say is the one that's signing our check for us or giving it to us. And if he needs to rebuke them, he will not be careful from offending them. And if he needs to shame them while rebuking them, he will not be embarrassed and he will not praise their false ways. This is something that's very, very challenging for us to do, for everyone. And especially for myself, I know this is a very big challenge when you're in the sales, when you're in the fundraising world. You meet a tremendous amount of people all the time. And imagine just take this for example. I had this story. There was a person that I was at shul, I was davening, and there's this guy, he's collecting tzedakah, charity, and he gets permission from the gabbai, from the person in charge of the minyan, of the shul. He could go ask, like almost at the end of davening, he could ask for donations from the whole community. So he goes and he claps on the bima, on the podium, and he says his 30-second pitch, and asks everyone to donate towards him. And there's this one guy, I think that was a wealthy person, starts all of a sudden saying, could you stop doing this? This is not, I want to be able to do this in peace and quiet. And I was shocked, because I'm like, wait, this guy has permission to do it. This is his whole livelihood, and it's known, this is what people do. And I went over to the guy and said, hey, this is not acceptable to do that. This guy, obviously it's his livelihood and it's everything about him. Like, he had permission to do it, and that's it. Let him be as to be. If it bothers you, just do your own thing. Don't worry about him. And I went over to the guy that was just shut down by this big guy over there, and I said to him, like, you know what? Like, I totally understand what you're going through. It's really hard and it's challenging, and gave him a donation as well. But it's the point is, we can't just be quiet when we see, okay, that there's someone out there that's, just because he might have wealth and all that we can't be able to go over to him and say, oh, I can't say anything because of this, because he's quote unquote exalted, he's quote unquote, he's the one that signs my paycheck and I can't do anything. No, this is our job to be able to stand up for what's right. And so I'm going to go back into the text. A man who solely relies on other people for his livelihood and success must ensure that he remains on good terms with them, so that they will continue to take care of him. This can lead him away from his divine service in a number of ways. He might feel a need to flatter them or even join them in their inappropriate behavior, which he would never have done were he not dependent on them. And this is something you see all the time. People are joining, I would say, joining the crowd because it's the in thing to do, because he's the one to follow. In contrast, a person who has bitachon will not hesitate to rebuke them, even if it requires offense. And again, you have to be very careful. You can't just go and start offending people. That's not the way in Judaism that we do it. It's going to pull people further away. We have to be very, very careful. Additionally, if rebuking them requires that he shame them, he will not be embarrassed to do so, since he does not rely on them for his needs. And this, again, I'm going to go one more time. You got to know there's tremendous halachot, laws about shaming a person in public and all that. So you got to be careful. It's not just the thing to do. And again, you don't want to be the one falling into their bad behavior as well. And there's a famous thing in Pirkei Avot that says, in a place where there's no man, stand up to be the man. Be that one person. Be that shining light out there. You see so many times that there's people that everyone just goes with the crowd. Be that one shining light around that says, no, I'm going to stand up for what's right. I'm going to do the right thing. And don't follow the crowds. And we had that in last week's Torah portion as well. You know what? Korach and all the people went and followed him. And you have to be able to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to go in the wrong way to go, and follow the right way, the right path. And now we're going to go to the next pasuk where it says, the following verses will support the above, that someone who trusts in God, he could rebuke others without the fear of repercussion. They'll be able to stand up to the wicked. And it says in Yeshaya that but the Lord Hashem helps me. Therefore, I'll not be embarrassed. Therefore, I made my face like flint, and I knew that I will not be ashamed. And again, as it says, fear them not, and do not fear their words. And at the end of the same thing, at the end of the same pasuk, it says, fear not their it's fear not their words, and do not be dismayed by them. Again, here's another pasuk, and it also says, do not fear them. And then again in the same chapter, it goes on again, do not be dismayed by them. And it keeps on bringing up different psukim, different verses where it's so clear, like you can't be afraid. You have to remember where everything comes from. As a shamir, as it says, as a shamir stronger than flint, I've set your forehead. Do not fear them and do not be intimidated by them. Everyone, that is our job to do, is not to be scared to do the right thing just because someone has wealth, just because someone signs your check, just because someone you feel is all of a sudden everyone respects tremendously for, and he's doing the wrong thing. No, you have to do what is right. Okay, and now we're going to go to a part where it says peace and serenity. Okay, so among the Torah benefits of Bitachon, a person who trusts in God, his trust will bring him to turn his heart away from a preoccupation with worldly matters and instead dedicate himself to matters of divine service. He'll be able to start doing things with Torah, doing things with mitzvahs, being able to help others out. In terms of tranquility of his soul, peace of mind, and lack of worry regarding worldly things. I'm going to have over here, we're going to start sharing in a minute about a person with bitachon is superior to the alchemist in 10 ways. We're going to learn about that in a second. So matters he could be compared to an alchemist. And what is the alchemist? You might have never heard of it, but it's something that happened over 1,000 years ago. Is a person who knows how to transform silver to gold and copper and iron to silver. Through his talents and efforts, such a person, if it were possible, would have little worry regarding his livelihood. Think about that for a second, everyone. You take a person, back in the day, they had these people, they did forgery. They were able to take silver and they were able to transfer it into gold. And someone that had copper and iron, they were able to change that into silver. And what happens is these people, it was illegal to do. You weren't allowed to do that. But these people would say, hey, you know what? I want to do this. And we become very rich. But there's 10 challenges we have to this, because there's a lot of things to worry about when you're doing things that are illegal to do. And that's what we're going to go into over here. We'll hear a little bit of that for another 2 minutes. A person who has bitachon can be compared to someone whose livelihood is secure because he knows how to transform cheap materials into gold and silver, and therefore has little to worry about. In fact, the author will now establish a person who has bitachon is superior to the alchemist in 10 ways. Moreover, a person who has bitachon is superior in 10 ways. First of all, we're going to talk about 10 different things the alchemist has. Today, the alchemist needs specific materials for his work and cannot complete it without them. And if he doesn't have, these tools are not accessible at all times. And this is a challenge. So if a person who trusts in Hashem has his sustenance guaranteed to him, he's going to have his money from any means available in the world. As it says with regarding the manna that the Jews ate in the desert, so he would make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by whatever comes from the mouth of Hashem does man live. This is something so powerful. The Jews in the desert, after they left Egypt, did not have food. They were in the desert. And God provided for them for 40 years straight. Every single morning fell from the sky the man. And what was that? That was able to taste like anything. And it was always there for them every single morning. And on Friday, it came a double portion for Shabbat. And one thing that was even crazier were the people that would try to keep it over the next night. That was a punishment. You weren't allowed to do that. And it would get moldy, it would get rotten, it would not last the next day. And Hashem was angry with people if they didn't believe him that there was gonna be more food the next day. And so our job, everyone, is the alchemist. He has no idea where his tools are. He doesn't have his tools with him every second. He's traveling. He didn't have his stuff with him. But you know what? Someone relies on Hashem. The sustenance is always with him. So now we go on to, as it said over here, this illustrates that Hashem is not limited to the natural order. Rather, he can provide for us in any manner that he wishes. So we're going to start today's letter, a beautiful letter. It's a short letter, but it was found by the grace of God on the 11th of Iyar, 5718, 1958 in Brooklyn, New York. Greetings and blessings. Your letter of Motzei Shabbat arrived after a long break. There you write about the state of affairs in your business and say that you are worried about what the annual balance will look like. There is certainly no need for me to expound at length on the subject of the attribute of bitachon. To have bitachon does not mean being content with studying about it in the holy books. Very nice, I study it, I learn it, great, I did my job. It means trusting actually and practically, really being able to internalize and believing it and actualizing it and having it in practicality. It means that when there arrives a moment that is not as one would have liked it to be, one should firmly trust that there's no more than no more than a passing thing. As the Torah writes, for the Lord your God is putting you to the test. And when God sees that one withstands his trials, that withstood this trial, one then sees, even with fleshly eyes, that it will all the no more than a trial, a disguise without any substance. I want to bring up how important and powerful this piece is for us to remember that we have such a strong job of, when we're going through those challenging times in business or whatever it is, to really actualize when we're struggling, when our account is at minus or low, whatever it is, trust in Hashem, but really trust in Hashem. And I had just one thing to end off with. It was something so powerful when I was talking about the annual balance. One of the, on Simchat Torah this year, someone said to me, Ari, what's your annual budget for Nevut? What's your annual budget for the soldiers? So I gave him a number. He said, no, I want you to write at the end of the budget, right at the line, Ein od milvado. There's nothing but Hashem. Hashem's the one that takes care of the budget. And so just something so powerful for us to remember today as we end off the class and we start for the day. Try that. Try to remember, hey, what's my budget exactly? Obviously, you got a budget, you got to do the proper things, but be able to make sure at the same time you know where it's coming from, and you can write down Ein od milvado. There's nothing but Hashem. Wishing you all a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic day.